Hello and welcome, my name is Gamedog and today I'll be showing you a solo Magicka Dragonknight build for the Horns of the Reach patch. This build is mainly meant for solo and outnumbered PvP content and relies heavily on high sustain and high survivability in the modern meta. I've been working on this build since the Morrowind patch, but since the Horns of the Reach came out not too long ago I decided to lay it live for a bit. And I've taken it up here again 5 days after the launch of the Horns of the Reach, so that I felt kind of comfortable about how this build works and how it plays in the current meta. And I am pretty comfortable with it. This build is definitely really survivable and will help you get out there and do the outnumber situations that usually most builds would fall under within the first couple of minutes. Like, this thing has great survivability and great sustain, and I'll also show you how this build can do a lot of damage without having a lot of stats to deal with it with. So if you want to see the build in action, please click on the link on the screen right now and it'll take you to the 1vx montage recorded for this build. First up, let's get into the armor piece. I'll first get into the equipment, then the stats, then the skills, and I'll end up with the champion points as usual. First up here we're wearing 1-piece light armor, 1-piece medium armor and 5-piece heavy armor. The first setup we're used here is a monster set. This is a Bloodspawn set we're using on this piece. You could switch this out for any other monster set if you want to, but I recommend you to run Bloodspawn for this build in particular. If you want some more damage you could switch to Scoria, but you are going to miss out on the 2-piece extra ultimate you're going to get from this and the extra survivability via the resistances you get for the 6 seconds duration here. Another thing is that the ultimate this gives you is going to be really good in combination with some of the DK passives that you obviously always want, the class passives in particular. And then we have some of the abilities like Invigorating Drain that we're using on our ability bar. I'm gonna get into those later, so that's our first setup. Next up we got Seducer, which is a craft set. I'm also using this because this build is very obtainable, everyone can use it. You could shift this out with something like Desert Rose if you want to, however I don't feel like Desert Rose is as good when it comes to the resource management. Desert Rose is nice if you're under a lot of pressure and a lot of heat and you can get those ticks off, but let's say you want to represent yourself and you're not taking damage for a while but you're still knowing that these enemies are following you, you're not going to get any Magicka for that. This build will constantly keep this set will constantly keep the Magicka ticking and will have the 5-piece reduced cost on all our Magicka abilities, which keeps all our bars pretty much nice and low on cost, which is really nice for our survivability and great for our sustain. So the next up here we got Wizard's Riposte, which is our last 5-piece set. We're running 1 2-piece set and 2 5-piece sets here. This setup here can be gained from PvP rewards and can be found in most guild vendors as well. And it's fairly cheap, but the main reason we're using this is because of the 5 set ability here. As you can see, when you take critical damage you apply minor mayhem to enemies for 15 seconds, reducing their damage done by 15%. I'm pretty sure that most of you guys already know that this set exists, but it's really nice and keeps your survivability at its best, especially if you're going to tackle some of those really bursty builds out there like nightblades and sorcerers coming at you from all sides. This thing will keep you running and will definitely debuff them and debuff their damage by quite an amount. 15% is quite an amount. And if you lay it on top of the champion points that you have, such as for example Ironclad here, where we take less direct damage, this is actually going to reduce their damage by quite an amount, which will make you more survivable. So let's get into the enchants here. So first up we got a spell damage enchant, and the next 2 here will be recovery enchants. As you can see, we got quite the amount of recovery on the front bar. If I pop a potion, we should get even more. Yeah, we get even more, so 1800 is about where we are at if we get our potion up running with a 20% bonus. This is pretty stable, it's really high recovery considering most DKs isn't running this much, especially not on heavy armor. And by the way, remind you that you are running heavy armor on this build, so you will get the Constitution passive, even though it's not as big as it used to be. Where is it? There we go. It's still worth running, especially if you're wanting to run heavy armor and basically face tank like this build can do in pretty much all situations where you end up outnumbered. So the weapons here we're using Seducer and Wizard's Riposte on the front bar here. So when we're blocking, we're proccing the Wizard's Riposte, but when we're switching to the back bar, we're only using Seducer, and Wizard's Riposte here will be kind of a secondary thing that we can use when we're taking and tanking damage. So the traits here on the front bar and the first weapon is Sharpened, and we're running an Oblivion enchant. The reason we're running Sharpened weapons here, even though Sharpened got quite a nerf last dispatch, which is really apparent. A lot of people have changed away from this, but on the Magicka Dragonknight I'd still prefer it together with some of the champion points like Spell Erosion here. We're getting quite the penetration out of that, and we really need the penetration considering our spell damage is really low. I'll get into how this build can still do great burst later on when we get into the skills, because there's something about layering different abilities and different class abilities on top of each other in the correct order to get quite a lot of damage done in a short amount of time, which is again what indicates bursts. So you can still burst on classes that don't have a lot of damage. Stats are not everything, as it seems. So let's go to the back bar here. We're running defending, obviously. This is our a bit more defensive back bar. We're using this for all our healing and all our buffs mainly, so we're not really being active and aggressive on this bar. And then again, we're running Drain Magicka Poison on the back bar here as well. You could run other poisons. I prefer this poison in general because it both increases the enemy's the cost of the enemy's magic abilities and increases the cost of the enemy's stamina abilities, as well as refunding you some magicka and stamina. Actually 238 per second for 3.5 seconds. So you're getting like roughly, what is it, like 800, 700, 800 magicka and stamina when this procs over the 3.5 seconds. That's pretty nice for keeping your sword and board up when you're blocking. We don't have anything else into stamina besides the fact that we're running heavy armor with constitution. We're using tri-stat pods as well here, as well as we're using tri-stat food. But besides that, we're only going to rely on our constitution passive or essence of health here, and then the bonuses we gain from this to keep our sword and board up. However, this does work. Another thing you can do is obviously ultimates. The Dragonknight does have battle roar, which has been reduced throughout the time, throughout the ages almost. How battle roar have gotten beaten throughout the ages, Jesus Christ. But we are still going to get something out of using this, especially with the low costing ultimates that we have, so we're going to be able to cast a lot more ultimates and get this battle roar passive a lot more, and it actually restores 58 points for your health, magicka and stamina per ability, per ultimate cost. So that is the setup we're running right now, and that's the reason we're running it. You can change some of the things out. This is again just how I would run the Magicka Dragonknight in the current meta. This is my playstyle sort of, and you could change it around if you want to and really deal with it how you want to. You could also just play with this if you want to. This is just how I would play the Magicka DK as it seems right now. So if we get into the stats, we can see some of the current Magicka we have here. We have 38k on the front bar. I think we have a bit low on the back bar because of the shield. This doesn't change too much though. More Magicka on the front bar. We are running and infused enchantment. You could shift this out for reinforced, and I know a lot of people do this for more tankiness and more survivability, but I've actually chosen to do the opposite thing, just to get some more enchant in there and get our magicka higher up so we can do some more damage, because this build is lagging a bit of damage, as you can see here. This does not change the fact that you can still deal a great amount of damage. Our spell critical is not too high either, but we got great survivability for our magicka recovery, especially if we use that pot there. We can get some of these stats here a bit higher up, especially our magicka recovery, as you can see there. And then we got some maximum stamina of 14,000 and a maximum health pool of 26,000, which is really nice and stable as well. Our critical is, let me just use that buffed here again. Our spell resistance and physical resistance are lying at 26k and 22k buffed separately, almost 23k on the physical resistance. And it might not seem as too much, and it isn't really, but we're actually getting a lot of tankiness from Wizard's Repast, so we don't really need too much of the armor when we first get that thing ticking for the 15-second duration. Next up here we got some critical resistance, which is on 2,500 almost, and that's about the sweet spot, which I'd recommend that you guys reach. If you, like me, don't have these monster sets and have horrible RNG and can't get them in the right trades, you can go in the CP and put some points into your critical resistant here in resistant, which will help you out to get that 2.5k crit resistance that is kind of where you want to be. So we're running Munderstone is the mage. We're running some extra magicka here, as you can see, for our magicka pool and for some more damage, as well as some more healing and some more shields. We're actually using healing ward and coagulating blood. I'll get into that as well. And we're running stage 4 vampirism as well for the more magicka recovery and the more stats here, as well as some of the magicka vampire abilities. So let's get into the skills here. First up here we got Burning Embers. This is our hot and our first dot as well. It's a heal over time as well as a damage over time, and what you really do with this is that it has a low cost, so you apply it to your enemy, and after a certain amount of time you can apply it again, or it runs out and it'll give you 95% of the damage inflicted back in health. This is really nice for keeping our health up at high while we're dealing with people on our front bar, so we don't have to switch on our back bar and go defensive. You don't want to go defensive too often, or else you'll let your enemy get offensive on you and basically let him pressure you more than you can pressure him. So by having this here on our front bar, we can always pressure our enemies, always heal off of him, and never have to switch back to our back bar, but just always keep that damage up and keep him suppressed. Next up here, really nice ability by the way. Next up here we've got Flame Lash, bread and butter for the Magicka DK. This thing here has sort of a high tooltip, even though I don't have too much damage. You want to be in a tooltip around 8k usually. So this is a bit on the lower part. But again, if you combine it with some of the other abilities, like if you do a Flame Lash into an ultimate cast, or you could do a heavy attack Oblivion proc, as you can see here on the first part here, 1.5k, into a heavy attack Oblivion proc into a Flame Lash, into a Ferocious Leap, into another Flame Lash, you'll still be doing quite the amount of damage. And I actually have a clip I'm running right here on the screen to see how much damage you can still deal with this. This is why this build can still deal burst, even though it's insanely tanky. It doesn't really have any of those damage sets or damage enchants on it. It can still do burst, as I said, and it's really nice when you're 1vxing to be able to take the pressure, take the heat, and still be able to deal the damage. So this is sort of a new tank spank for the current meta. But the thing about Flame Lash besides that is that it has a nice general damage, and it has the Power Lash. This morph has the Power Lash, which basically lets you do a 9k tooltip damage here. That will on people who are off balance, and it'll actually heal you for 15k over 2 seconds, which is not as high in Cyrodiil, but it's still healing. Healing is healing. So the more healing we can get out of this bar, the more healing we're gonna use. So next up here we've got Invigorating Drain. This is playing a big role in our ultimate regeneration setup. The Dragonknight has some passives here. For example here, Mountain's Blessing, that gives you some ultimate when you're using some of these abilities here in the in the Dragonknight skill tree here. But besides that, Invigorating Drain will keep our ultimate up running high, as you can see here. I've basically traded this out for Fossilize, which a lot of people would use instead. It basically stuns your enemy and roots him in a spot. This ability does about the same. It doesn't root the enemy, and it has a bit less range, but what it does instead is that it completely stuns him, and you generate 5 ultimate every 1 second for 3 seconds. Plus restoring 25% of your missing health, which will be cut in half in Cyrodiil, but health is still health, as I said. This thing is really, really great for healing some, getting some ultimate back, and can still do the stun part, maybe even better than stuff like Petrify or Fossilize will do here. As you can see, Fossilize actually grants your enemy a damage shield, which can be kind of annoying when you want them to take a lot of damage and stuff, especially when this build doesn't have the biggest punch in the world. This will still keep them stunned. The way you use this is that you kind of have to animation cancel it when you use it, so you don't use it for the full duration or the full channel, but you just animation cancel it and stun your enemy for the duration of the stun. And it also has a low cost. It's a vampire ability, and we are stage 4, so we get it even lower on cost. So, but mainly for the ultimate regen, so we can use some of these nice ultimates I've got, especially on the back bar here with Champions Light. Well, Light's Champion, I'll get into that in a moment. So next up here we've got Deep Breath. This is a nice AoE-like ability that we can use when we're outnumbered. It takes and draws health from your enemies and deals it back in some burst damage. The thing about this is that it actually stuns people who are casting. It sets them off balance, I mean, when they're casting, which you can use the Flame Lash for to exploit for your Power Lash. But also you can stop people from casting hard casting C-frags or any other cast time abilities, and you can deal with a lot of people at once and getting some health back and still dealing some damage. I usually use this to kind of see which of the enemies I can grind on first, if you know what I mean, by drawing them, by dealing some damage in an AoE to them, and see who takes most damage. Who could I position myself on first, get him down, get the next guy down, and kind of just try to take them out one by one, and obviously try to isolate them as I'm using my environment and line of sight, which is really important as well when you're outnumbered. So really nice ability to deal with outnumbered situations, especially when you're trying to 1vx. So next up here, do mind the cost. It is quite expensive, but we are running Seducer, so the cost will be a bit lower. Next up here we've got Burning Talons. This is our root. This immobilizes our enemy for 4 seconds and make them stand in one spot. It's an expensive ability, but it basically works instead of our Fossilize here, and we're still able to root people. The main thing you can do with this is that you can root people and then position yourself behind them or away from them, as you prefer, which is really, really nice. Remember the 3 CCs. We got stuns, we got snares, and we got immobilize. And I think in this Dragonknight skill tree we've already got a snaring passive somewhere here. Yeah, movement speed is snared by 30% for 4 seconds. So we already got all the CCs CC types in play here. So next up here we got Ferocious Sleep. This is a nice burst ability on the Dragonknight of the Dragonknight class. It has low cost, and the Ferocious Sleep is basically dealing us flame damage of up to almost 15,000. I reckon if I obviously buff some of these abilities, they'll be having higher tooltips, which will roughly deal with 15 to 16,000. And it can do an AoE stun that basically sets people off for a moment, stun them for 2 seconds, while giving us a damage shield equivalent to 54% of our maximum health. So the higher health we have, the better, you can say. And we are at 26k, 27 almost, which makes this quite high. You can survive 2 to 3 seconds only on the shield on. So it kind of works that's in survivability as well, but mainly we're using this because of the damage and the low cost. It's really nice to finish off enemies who are at about 50% health, and this is where I do the heavy attack Oblivion enchant Flame Lash into an ultimate drop to get the burst in, and as I said, you can kill people quite quickly by using this ability. This is my main finisher for people who are on like kind of low health that I know I can take out in one draw. I'm sorry, my throat is kind of weird. So next up here we got Structured Entropy. This is our major sorcery buff, as well as giving us some more max health on our back bar. The max health is nice because we're using Healing Ward and Coagulating Blood, which I'll get into in a moment. A lot of people might be wondering, why is he doing this? So basically major sorcery. It's also giving us some health over time, as well as dealing a bit of damage, which is useful. And it's low on cost as well. So next up here we got Volatile Armor. This is our armor buff basically. It buffs our armor, and it also has this little AoE that you can kind of use for some pressure and grinding on some damage shield if you're fighting, let's say, a sorcerer or something. Add that extra damage on and it's actually going to do a bit of a difference. But what we mainly use this for is to expose hidden enemies. If we know there is a nightblade around us, we can use this to expose them and then buff ourselves at the same time. So we'll always be buffed if we keep trying to expose nightblades, or just keep trying to get this on and you make sure there's no one around us. So really go and spy check for these guys, as well as buffing our own armor. Really nice. It's sort of expensive, but you can really you can afford it with the resource setup that we have. Next up, we've got Elusive Mist here, which basically this lets us take 75% less damage and gain us Major Expedition for 4 seconds, increasing the movement speed by 30%. This is basically our getaway and our repositioning tool. This is our mobility in a nutshell. The Dragonknight don't have a whole lot of mobility. I personally feel like the class was made to kind of stand its ground and be a bit more tanky than other classes. But since we've already got, I mean, look at PvP as it is right now. Everyone and their mother has movement speed and the Dragonknight doesn't. You really need to use this to make yourself a bit more mobile. It does have an expensive cost, but again, we are wearing Seducer, so we are going to get the lower cost on this. Really nice to reposition yourself. Don't spam it, but you're really going to be using this to get away with, especially if you're fighting outnumbered. Reposition yourself, get line of sight, get behind something, or use your environment with it. Really, really nice ability. Next up, we've got Healing Ward. This is one of the 2 healing abilities we have. Well, 3 if we don't count the Lights champion from the set here in Power Lash and Burning Embers, but these are our 2 main heals. So Healing Ward is the first ability we'll use in our little heal combo, so to say, and basically gains us a damage shield depending on with the size depending on how much health we've lost. Which again, the more health we have, the more this is gonna heal. So that's really how it's gonna work. The shield size is increased by up to 300% depending on how much we're damaged, basically. So the lower health we have, the more shield we're gonna get. It's quite expensive, as well as our next ability, Coagulating Blood, which has quite an expensive cost as well. Again, we can afford it with the sustain setup we're running, with the poison and the potion and the ultimates dropping from all sides with Invigorating Drain. We're really gonna be able to use these and keep our resources high, so we're going to be able to use both of these for some amazing healing. I can't stress enough how much you can survive with these 2 going in together, and I know a lot of people would doubt that, but like from what I've tested and from what I've played with, these 2 are really, really comfortable to use together. So Coagulating Blood basically heals us for a tooltip of 7.1k and increasing that by 33% based on our missing health. As well as we gain extra health recovery from it, which is not really anything we're going to talk about. We are vampires, so we are going to get less health recovery in general, but it's sort of going to help. Every buff is going to help in its own way. So the way that we're going to use these 2 is that we're first going to apply the Healing Ward when we get low on health. I guess I could wait for it to run out and then jump from a wall. Let's do that. There we go. Jump from the wall, we get down on health, put this up, put that up, and we're already pretty stable on health, 66%, and we have a ward up to cover the rest. which is going to heal us finished, right? So that's how we use this setup basically. We first apply our damage shield, which gains us some immediate protection, and then we use this to gain health in behind the damage shields, which will keep its large size due to the wounds we had when we used it. So basically you can keep this crazy ward on while still healing yourself in underneath it. And I like to use these two in a combo because it basically means that no matter what type of damage your enemy deals, if someone is using shield breaker for example, or has a lot of points into breaking barrier, I think it's called, scattering blows, where you can destroy damage shields, you're still going to get some general heals in behind. Using these two in a combination will also give you like roughly 4 to 5k heals per second. So it's like crazy healing you have here. Crazy expensive as well, but again, we can afford it with the setup as we're running right now, and that's why we're running this in the first place. So next up here we got Light's Champion, cheap ultimate, reduces our damage taken by 30%, induces our critical done by 15%, gains us major protection and so on for 5 seconds. We're getting 9.2k healing every 1 second for 5 seconds on this thing here. So this is basically going to keep us immortal for 5 seconds once we use it. This is not only a getaway tool, this is like our little, this is our retard button, so to say. You're going to keep yourself alive for maybe just the duration of time that you can get out of the way, or you can use it offensively by using this and then go on your front bar and be really tanky and not have to block or not have to do anything. Just be really tanky for those 5 seconds. Be all up front and just getting all the healing from the ultimate drop here, as well as its cheap cost is going to make us able to use it more and more often, since we're going to be using Invigorating Drain, Bloodspawn, and the Dragonknight passives, so on and so forth, just to get a lot of ultimate running and constantly having this up. I'd say you almost have this up every 10 or 15 seconds. The same is the deal for Ferocious Leap pretty much. Every 15 seconds you're going to be able to use this, which basically means every kill, almost. So this is our version of in-cap, sort of saying. So this is the setup on the skills here. I'm going to go quickly into the champion points. So let's start with the tower here. First up here, we got Warlord, which is our cost of our break free. This is basically when we CC break. I've put 56 points into it, just to round it off. I want the nice and clean 20%, you know? I'm that kind of person. I'm sorry. Yeah, but this basically makes our CC breaking much cheaper. 20% is quite an amount, and again, it means that we don't have to tap too much off of our kind of low, sort of low max stamina here, so that we can survive for a lot longer on the stamina that we have, of course, together with all the other things such as ultimate and poisons and potions and whatever we have to sustain ourselves with. Next up here we got Siphoner, 10 points. This is just for our light attacks. Obviously we're using frequent light attacks on both bars to proc our poison and to proc our Oblivion damage enchant here. And this will basically help us debuff some of our enemies' recovery as well. So just a little 10 points in there. 42 points into Arcanist. This is our Magicka recovery. And next up here we've got the Shadow, and we've got 56 again into Tumbling just to clean it off, and 56 into Shadow Ward. Shadow Ward basically reduces the cost of our block by 20%. Really nice when you're using a sword and board in general, but also just when you're fighting outnumbered and you want to take some less damage. Maybe you're going for the kill, or you're just tanking an insane amount of people trying to hit you at once. And next up here we've got Tumbling, which is our dodge roll, which reduces the cost of our dodge roll so we can get out of the sticky situations if we're fighting people who are rooting us, snaring us, and whatever else of filth this world has to deal with. So next up here we've got the Apprentice. First up we've got Blessed, 30 points, extra healing done, 7.71%, or healing in general. More survivability, more healing, more bursty heals. Next up here we got Elfborn. We don't have too much critical, as you might remember, so we're prioritizing this a bit less, but we are still going to get some critical from it. Next up here we got Elemental Defender, which increases our Flame, Frost, and Shock damage, as well as our Magicka damage. We have 48 points into this, just to get some nice base damages here on our Flame Lash and our main abilities basically. As I said, this is the reason our Flame Lash is still having that sort of 8k tooltip, even though we have like 1 damage enchant and then 1 damage coming from Wizard's Riposte here. And then we got Spell Erosion, which is our last piece, and that's for penetration, since we don't have a whole lot of penetration and we don't have a whole lot of damage. So extra penetration is going to be really nice, especially if you pair this together with our sharpened trait on our weapon, front weapon especially. Next up we got Master at Arms, which is damage, direct damage done by 20% again, 56 points into that. This increases the damage of any direct damage abilities, for example, our Flame Lash. our ferocious leap and so on. So we're going to be having those abilities getting a bit more damage as well, higher tooltips. Next up, we've got scattering blows. This is nice to fight people who are using shields like healing ward, harness Magicka, hardened ward, whatever wards people are running. We're gonna get a bit faster through them, and again, we don't have too much damage, so this is really valuable for us to be able to get that extra damage towards certain type of playstyles. So we don't have anything to ritual, by the way. I kind of threw Thaumaturge a bit out. It's not giving too much if you put points into it. 10 points is only equivalent of like 4%, so not worth it in my opinion. We don't have way too many dots. We don't have crazy many dots. I will still say though, applying your dots is a really great idea still. It's gonna grind your enemies slowly down. So applying dots like our burning embers here, burning talons, as well as our volatile armor and structured entropy is still gonna be grinding our enemy down and taking off their resources, gnawing and eating off of their resources slowly, but we don't want to prioritize it too much in here since the champion point is not giving too much of an output. Next up here we've got this steed and ironclad, and we've got reduced damage taken against direct damage abilities. This is basically any direct damage burst that people are dealing to us. This is really nice that we're using it together with Champion of Light, which Light's Champion, which can basically reduce our damage taken by 30%. It's great to use together with Elusive Mist, reduce our damage taken by 75%. Great to lose against our Wizard's Repast, reduce our damage taken by 15%. Like, we have a lot of reduced damage abilities, as you can see already. A lot of potential for that survivability to come into play, but really nice to reduce the general damage we're taking when we're fighting outnumbered. Next up here we've got resistance. This is our critical resistance. I've put points into this equivalent of the fact that we wanted to get that 2500 crit resistance in total. So I've just kind of said how many points do I absolutely need to just reach that mark and put them in there. Next up we've got the lady, and we've got kind of 20 points into these. They're not too valuable anymore, especially these two hardened and elemental defender, because they scale really badly. So I've only put like waste points into them sort of. Thick skin I've put a bit more, I put 20 into again, but it gives a bit more here, 9%. This is going to help us against damage over time abilities like fighting on the DKs or fighting disease damage off and so on. So great for like damage over time that's slowly going to take or sustain down. So next up here we got the Lord. This is our last CP. We've got Summon the Bastion. Why have we done this? Well, healing ward, we're using that as a general heal. The bigger the ward, the bigger the heal is going to be at the end of it. Next up here we got Quick Recovery. We've got a lot of points into this because it gives us 10% more healing received in general, which is going to come from both our burning embers or flame and power lashes or ultimate drops, who knows, like, or coagulating blood or healing ward. We're going to get more and more heals out of all those things. And that was the last from our champion points. I hope you all enjoyed. Please like, comment and subscribe in this video. I'd really like to know what you guys think of the build and what you guys think I should do next. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all later.